The Afghanistan withdrawal is a disaster. It's been a building disaster for the past several days. And now we're getting disturbing photos and images coming out of the airport in Kabul as civilians are desperately trying to flee the country as the Taliban encircles the city. And many people are saying the fall of Kabul is Joe Biden's Saigon, if you're familiar with what happened in Vietnam. Interestingly, there's this video going around where in April, reporters asked Joe Biden about a withdrawal from Kabul and would it look like Saigon? And Joe Biden says, no, of course not. The withdrawal is going to be, fine. It's going to be perfect. None of this is going to happen. He says, you will not see people being evacuated from the rooftops. And that's exactly what we're starting to see. There's one video coming out of the airport where there's like an Air Force jet trying to take off and there's people running and jumping on it. It's actually quite scary. Now, listen, I'm not a fan of anything that the United States has done in Afghanistan. We shouldn't have been there. We shouldn't have stayed there. And it seems like the only solution, some of these like neocons and neolib types have is to stay forever. I guess they want to make Afghanistan a colony of America. Okay, well, I don't think that's America's business. Granted, America has a lot of military bases and territories all over the world. I don't think that makes sense. And I think it's fair to point out that there was going to be tumult no matter what happened, no matter who was in charge when the withdrawal occurred. I will say, however, one of the best points that I've seen about what's going on, there's a couple good points. One, Joe Biden pushed back the timeline for withdrawal. That means not only did the Taliban have more time to plan or become more agitated, but Joe Biden also had more time to plan. The administration had more time to plan. The problem is with people like Mark Milley. They are woke generals. These people are a disaster. I'm not going to pretend like the Trump administration was perfect. However, a really good point that was made as well is that Trump had 4 years to withdraw from Afghanistan, and he waited a long time and was hoping for a second term. Now, of course, Joe Biden saying, he inherited this deal from Trump. I think it's unfair to say that this would have happened under Trump. I genuinely believe that. We have a story from the New York Post where they actually talk about Mike Pompeo and Trump and what they had said to the Taliban. And I will tell you this, as we have been saying since the beginning, Joe Biden projects weakness. They should have. I mean, it's probably stupid for me to say because I'm not over there. I'm not a general. I'm not a commander. But you'd imagine that instead of just pulling all the troops out, they would have, blown up the military equipment first. They would have then had the troops start circling around Kabul to start doing controlled evacuations. The civilians would have come out first, and then the final troops would have left. Instead, they left the bases and the equipment, and the Taliban seized it, and now they're circling Kabul. And here's the crazy thing about all of this, just as to why you probably clicked this. Where's Joe Biden? CNN reporting he may give a speech in a few days. Jen Psaki on vacation. The American people want to know what is happening. Not that I think the American people liked what was happening in Afghanistan from the get-go, but we deserve to know what's happening. And the president is unavailable. And the press secretary on vacation. The craziest thing is that instead of addressing the nation, Joe Biden put up this photo. It apparently shows him at Camp David on a Zoom meeting talking about what's going on, and people noticed the clocks are wrong. The clocks are wrong because they have all the different cities, Moscow, London, whatever. The clocks are wrong, suggesting the photo is from last winter, daylight savings time, because they say it's something like London and Moscow are 2 hours apart, but their clock shows 3, meaning the photo seems to have been taken during daylight savings time, which is not now. I don't know. Maybe they should never fix the clocks. I mean, let's be real. Like Biden's at Camp David. Have you ever? It's Camp David, right? It's not the White House. It's not the. I still think it should be maintained, and this is still a problem. But daylight savings time comes, and I've got I don't change the clock in my car for like 6 months, and I'm like, I know what time it is, whatever. So now I don't feel like changing it. Granted, this is like a situation room at Camp David where he's supposed to be addressing like major world conflicts. I think it'd be extremely important he had the correct time. So I can say this, either the photo appears to not be legit or our administration is so bumbling and fumbling that they don't even fix the clocks. Wow. Could you imagine him getting the time wrong when talking about some very important, international trade deal or conflict that's occurring between these regions? Because the London time It's not just London. It's everything north and south of London. Wow. We got to read some of this stuff. I got to show you what's going on. And I want to talk to you about the fall of Saigon because I think, where this is going is bad. But I want to make sure I stress, I do think there would have been bad things happening if Trump were in the White House during the withdrawal. I think it's absurd to think that if Trump was in the White House, the Taliban would just be like, whatever you say, boss. Let's be real. The Afghan security forces, they just gave in. There's videos of them like handing off their weapons like, have a nice day. With Trump, I think he would have lost it. He would have been furious. He threatened the full wrath on the Taliban. With Joe Biden in office, fumbling, bumbling Joe, who's scared of that guy? He's not even around right now. So they can do whatever they want. They know Joe Biden's nowhere. Trump would have been like, excuse me, no, we're going to go in. We're sending in. It would have been nuts. And I think a lot of us would have been very critical of that, too. It's only because we can see what's happening with Joe Biden that we're aware that maybe it would have been better to have a more strategic withdrawal. Trump is saying that their plan was very different from what Biden did, and Biden botched the whole thing. Well, I'll tell you this, Trump, you should have fired Mark Milley. You should have fired a lot of people, and you didn't do it. And so when you have someone like Donald Trump, who is supposed to be an outsider, but he comes in and he still just supports the same swamp monsters that have been in for a long time, I don't necessarily blame him, but at the same time, the buck stops with him, right? John Bolton. The people he was bringing in, he was getting bad advice. So I can respect that he wanted to come in and do a lot of things, and he did, and a lot of it was good. I think if he had fired more of these people, it'd be a very different situation. Newsweek says Joe Biden approval rating hits record low amid Afghan crisis. According to 538's tracker, which puts together a weighted average of polling, the president's approval rating is 50%. The figure as of August 13 marked the lowest point the tracker has hit thus far since Biden was inaugurated. His disapproval rating of 43.8% is also at its highest point so far. I think it's really obvious what this is. This is what happens when you don't elect a president, you elect against a president. CNN breaking news reporting yesterday evening. President Biden is expected to address the nation in the next few days about the crisis in Afghanistan. An administration official says, wow. Where's the president, man? It's a little bit of I don't know how to describe it. Man. Doesn't it feel like the country's just falling apart? You kidding me? With what's going on right now? They've seized look at this right now live. The Taliban has seized the presidential palace in Kabul. Afghanistan falls in a few days. It goes to show you this, too. Like, I'm not throwing all the shade at Joe Biden. I'll throw shade at him for not being here. Where's Jen's? Answer the questions. What's happening? Nowhere to be found. Let me just tell you, this is American, foreign policy at its best. Like, let's be real. At its worst, man, I don't know how you describe its worst. What Fast and Furious giving guns to cartels? No, this is like when we actually have a successful occupation for 20 years and then we leave. This is what happens. So again, not all Biden's fault. Let's throw it to George W. Bush. Let's throw it to Barack Obama. And then you got Donald Trump who wanted to get us out. I think we would have seen problems. I think we have to be fair about that. I just think Trump would have been like slamming his fist on the table, screaming. And I also think it's entirely possible the Taliban would have been terrified of Trump because we've talked about this. World leaders looked at Trump like a madman. And that's what even the leftist media was saying, that they're like, Trump's an embarrassment. He's a madman with his finger on the trigger. I got to tell you. You got a crazy guy who's waving his gun in the air, screaming. You're going to be like, okay, chill, stop. You get Joe Biden who sits down and falls asleep. You're going to be like, dude, party's on. Check this out. This is the craziest stuff. Top Biden spokeswoman, Jen Psaki, out of the office as Afghanistan falls to the Taliban. I can't believe it. I can believe it. I can believe it. I can believe it. I'm shocked by so much of this, though, to be completely honest. I mean, Jen Psaki, like, I'd at least expect her. She's not old and senile. She's just an administrative lackey. I figured she'd be up there saying everything that needed to be said. In this regard, they're just hiding. Our administration is hiding. Check this out. This one's mind-blowing. From MEAWW. What's wrong with White House clocks? London and Moscow's 3-hour time gap sparks wild theories. The White House clocks for London and Moscow showed a 3-hour gap instead of 2 in the pic, and Twitter pointed out it could be an old pic or a Photoshop. I don't know about none of that. All I can do is show you this. The White House tweeted, "This morning, the president and vice president met with their national security team and senior officials to hear updates on the drawdown of our civilian personnel in Afghanistan, evacuations of SIV applicants and other Afghan allies, in the ongoing security situation in Kabul." People then circled London and Moscow, noting a 3-hour time difference, to which someone said, it's from Kyle Becker. We said him on the show, actually. Either their clocks are wrong, doubtful, or this is an old photo just recycled and not even from this weekend. I'm sorry, this is not from Kyle, it's from someone else. There's currently only 2 hours between London and Moscow. What's actually going on? Old photo, look at the clocks. London and Moscow haven't been 3 hours apart since March, but nice try. Recent White House photos show a 3-hour time difference between London and Moscow. There are a few good explanations for this. Either Camp David's clocks are wrong, or the photos are from before March 28th, when London went ahead on daylight savings time, but Moscow didn't. This is fine, wrote journalist Kyle Becker. Someone said Tehran is 1.5 hours ahead of Moscow, but only 30 minutes in this pic. A Twitter user quipped, "Note, the time in London and Moscow on the clocks show a 3-hour time difference. However, there is currently only a 2-hour difference before March. London and Moscow have a 3-hour time difference because of daylight savings. Is this a stock photo? So it's not even London, it's also Tehran." Now, hold on. What's a simple solution? Is it that they photoshopped an image to convince people? I mean, that's not far-fetched. You know, PR is a game. You want to make sure people believe certain things and are calm or whatever. It's also entirely possible that it's Camp David. It's not necessarily the White House, but still, if our military and administration can't keep clocks at the right time, yikes. I can look at it this way. You know, if someone's got, like a summer house or a beach house, you show up and the clocks are wrong because you haven't been there in a long time. I don't necessarily know if I would believe that for Camp David, though, because Joe Biden's been going there. Certainly their clocks have to be updated, but they weren't. I can't tell you what it definitively proves because it's just wrong clocks. That's going to be up for you to decide what you think makes the most sense. I honestly have no idea. I do think it's a strong possibility they just put up a stock photo. They were like, "Hey, look, here's Biden." Because Biden isn't even giving a speech. If Biden was sitting here cognizant in these meetings, why couldn't he also just do a 1-minute really quick update to the camera? You see what I mean? Check it out. If he's having this meeting, they could have just said, "Mr. President, will you put out a simple tweet?" And he could have said something like, "My fellow Americans, we are addressing the situation in Afghanistan, and I will be giving a speech shortly. We want to make sure we have everything in order, and we're doing this properly before we give out too much information, but I appreciate your patience. Please stand by, and we will have that message for you as soon as possible and as soon as it makes sense to make sure everyone is safe during this ongoing situation." Out. Now, I don't expect Joe Biden to be that articulate, so, but why couldn't he just put out a message like that? In fact, why couldn't he just say, "My fellow Americans, you may be aware of an ongoing situation. We'll have more for you as soon as we can make sure everyone is safe. Thank you, and please stand by." Instead, they just post this photo. Why didn't they do anything to get a message out from the president? So I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm not here to make conspiracy assumptions, tell you this is what people are pointing out. MEAWW is NewsGuard certified. For all of you who care, it's a 92.5 out of 100. This is like NewsGuard says this is legit. And they're highlighting this difference. I think the administration went AWOL. I think they saw the crisis. Jack Posobiec tweets, "This isn't just the fall of Kabul. The entire leadership of the U.S. government disappeared today. 1,000 narratives collapsed in real time. D.C. theater gave way to reality. A generation of people around the world watched as the U.S. government was humiliated." Jack is correct. Absolutely correct. Got this tweet from Jason Brodsky. This is heartbreaking. It will be one of the most enduring and haunting videos from the U.S. withdrawal of Afghanistan. Afghan refugees clinging to a U.S. Air Force jet. Crazy video, man. Joe Biden said you would not see anything like this, but it is happening, man. Look at this. Kabul airport. People, all of these young men are climbing on top of the jet bridge, desperate to get out. The Taliban is moving in, and it's going to get really bad. Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be one of these apologists for U.S. foreign policy or anything like that. I'm happy to see the U.S. finally get out. Afghanistan's not an American colony, and I think if the establishment had its way, that's what would happen. I long for a world, I suppose, where we just mind our own business. Sound trade policy, harmony between nations to the best of our abilities, military strength to defend and back up ourselves, energy independence, more focus on nuclear energy and renewables. I think we could have that. But you see, there's people in this country and international business interests who think they should be in charge, and this is what you get because of it. Now, look, there are a lot of atrocities and a lot of horrible things happening in a lot of countries all over the planet. We can't be in all of them, and we shouldn't be in all of them. We're America. We shouldn't be going around and doing these things. There is a challenge, though, in that if the U.S. is not actively participating in the world stage, China would just start sweeping over and taking over, getting more and more resources. And then before you know it, within a couple decades, it's too late to even stop them because they've grown too powerful and accumulated too many resources. It's kind of what we saw with the Soviet Union, the Cold War, and Vietnam and Korea. These conflicts the U.S. was engaging in to stop the spread of communism, because if they got too big, war would either be inevitable or the U.S. would fall. It's a difficult situation. I'm not going to pretend to be omniscient, be smart enough to tell you what we should or shouldn't have done. For all I know, and to be completely honest, because I've talked to so many people, we've done the best we could. But I don't think so. I don't. I think it's the problem is we have a lot of liars. And because of all the lies, I'm just never going to trust that they're actually having our best interests. And I would prefer America to mind its own business. I would prefer us to do nation building in our own nation, to send this money and these contractors, by all means, weapon manufacturer, hey, build a road over in Michigan somewhere where the roads are falling apart. How about we build more critical infrastructure in the West Coast in these big empty areas? How about we focus on desert reclamation and start bringing, water and plant life to certain areas, and then start actually building up this country instead of constantly trying to go to war somewhere else. From the New York Post, Joe Biden's defeat will echo for an eternity. This one is revealing. We've got this down here. Let me just read. Pompeo was in the room when Trump warned the Taliban senior negotiator Mullah Baradar that if a single American was hurt or threatened, the entire wrath of American power would rain down on them. Quote, "We never trusted the Taliban. We made abundantly clear we weren't going to allow them to just walk away from any deal that they had struck. We were going to crush them. We were going to impose real costs on them. We weren't going to let them take these provincial capitals. They understood that American power was going to come to their village, to their community, to their friends and family. You can bet the Taliban believed Trump would make good on the threat." I actually agree with that. I think everybody in the world knew that to whatever degree you would, from a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a calm pacifist and 10 being a maniac slamming the nuclear button, Trump was certainly on the higher end of that scale. Some people might think he was unhinged. Others would just call him aggressive or tough. I don't think either is. I don't care if you like or hate Trump. The dude was a bully, and a lot of Americans liked that. He pushed back. He says, "Don't you tell me." He was a bully for America. How many people in this world were like, "Don't. This guy's nuts. Like, we don't know what he's going to do." Joe Biden's sleeping. You think this photo I see this photo come out. And you know what they're probably saying? Taliban, they see this. They're looking at the time. And they're just laughing and saying, this guy's pathetic. He'll do nothing. That's exactly what happened. They knew Joe Biden would do nothing, and Joe Biden did nothing. And they're sweeping through Afghanistan, just taking everything. And it's getting worse and worse. Meanwhile, where was Biden when Kabul fell silent? Having another holiday at Camp David. The White House tweeted out a still photo of him taking notes while watching a video conference of his national security team. Very reassuring. I think, people are saying this could be photoshopped. I don't know about all that. I honestly kind of think the clocks are probably just not updated because they're just crappy digital clocks. Could be. I don't know, man. But let me show you something. Let me explain something to you. This is the fall of Saigon. And you have this photo of people climbing onto a rooftop and being evacuated by helicopter. This was, the South Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese. The U.S. was losing control. The North Vietnamese were surrounding the city. They were coming on. Let me just read a little bit. They say the fall of Saigon. And so you can understand when people say Kabul is Joe Biden's Saigon, is our generation's Saigon. This is what it means. The fall of Saigon also known as the liberation of Saigon by the North Vietnamese, was the capture of Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, by the People's Army of Vietnam, PAVN, and the Viet Cong on the 30th of April, 1975. The event marked the end of the Vietnam War and the start of a transition period to the formal reunification of Vietnam into the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. The PAVN, under the command of General Van Tien Dung, began their final attack on Saigon on April 29th of April, 1975, with the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, forces commanded by General Nguyen Van Tuan, suffering heavy artillery bombardment. By the afternoon of the next day, the PAVN had occupied the important points of the city and raised their flags over the South Vietnamese presidential palace, just like what we saw right now in Kabul. The city was renamed Ho Chi Minh City after the late North Vietnamese president Ho Chi Minh. The capture of the city was preceded by Operation Frequent Wind, the evacuation of almost all American civilian and military personnel in Saigon, along with tens of thousands of South Vietnamese civilians who had been associated with the Republic of Vietnam. A few Americans chose not to be evacuated. United States ground combat units had left South Vietnam more than 2 years prior to the fall of Saigon and were not available to assist with either the defense of Saigon or the evacuation. The evacuation was the largest helicopter evacuation in history. In addition to the flight of refugees, the end of the war, and the institution of new rules by the communists contributed to a decline in the city's population. I think that last one is the most chilling way to say that communists just go around murdering people. I'm worried about the people in Kabul. I'm worried about those who helped America. But I'll tell you, man, we shouldn't have been there. And I think Joe Biden botched this and continues to. And I will tell you, at the very least, you can argue, yeah, well, it was Trump's timeline. Then where is Joe Biden right now to come out and address the nation? Why is he hiding? And why is Psaki on vacation? Come out and just say it. That's apparently the statement so far, but still. The fact that they are hiding, cowering on vacation at this time, you come back from vacation. When the power went out in Texas and Ted Cruz was about to fly to Cancun or wherever he was going, the media went nuts. And now that Joe Biden and Psaki are on vacation during the fall of Kabul is insane. Think about what history will say of this day. Again, it's good we're leaving. I'm worried about those who are, at risk. And Ron Paul said it. He said it best. If you prescribe the wrong medication and it's causing problems, you don't just keep the patient on that medication indefinitely. You have to take them off of it. And if the invasion of Afghanistan was wrong, we should have left a long time ago. You see, because we've been in there for so long, there are a lot of people in Kabul who have had probably no choice but to work with the Americans in some way, work with us in some way. If we had left right away, most of these people probably would just be like, okay, the Taliban is bad, but, now how many people are going to be called traitors, hung up, strung up? How many people, 18-year-olds, were born after the occupation and don't know life under the Taliban? It's going to be bad. And it's the fault of the U.S., and right now it's the fault of Joe Biden. Again, I'm going to say it. I don't know that Trump would have necessarily done a better job. I can tell you that they would at least fear the man, and this probably wouldn't be happening. But I would actually say, too, I think Trump's aggressive behavior, he would have been sending in the troops. He would have done things very, very differently. There would have been a major turnaround. I think we'd all be very critical to a certain degree, but it's only because we can see the failures of Joe Biden that we would have been. I imagine that if Trump was still in office, he would have started pulling troops out. Afghan security forces would have bowing down. Trump would have lost it. And then he would have said, no way. And then we'd be like, oh, this is BS. Trump should be pulling out. This is crazy. It's only now because we can see how crazy things are getting because of the weakness of Biden that we know we needed a stronger commander-in-chief. I don't know. It's easy to say someone would have done better. We just don't know. But Biden's botching it. That's a fact. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.